Welcome back, everyone, to the MattVidPro AI YouTube channel. So Google, of all companies, actually created a very interesting AI tool. It's completely free to use. It uses Google's latest best model, and I honestly think they have some real value they've created here. And also, by the way, it features some of the best AI tech I've ever seen for text-to-speech, which is all really surprising, again, coming from Google. So here's the basic rundown on this. It's called Notebook LM. It is classified as an experiment by Google, which means it's kind of in beta, it's kind of in testing, but they seem pretty committed to this one, and I can understand why it's actually getting popular. I think this page does a pretty good job explaining it. Collaborate with a virtual research assistant. That's more or less what's going on here. You can upload documents. They'll either be PDFs or just chunks of text that you toss into it. Pretty much any text-based information you can just slap in there, and it can hold up to 50 different sources, which is quite a few. And you'll be able to chat with your various PDFs and text documents in various ways, making study guides, FAQs, timelines, etc. The keen amongst you will be like, hey, I've seen this before. You know, I've seen chat with PDF apps before that use AI large language models, and I can upload big documents. Hey, that's all true. However, these chat with PDF tools don't work in the same way as Notebook LM to the best of my knowledge. From what I can tell, these older chat with PDF apps will either use a search functionality, so the large language model will take keywords from your question or chat and then search through the PDF for text snippets that match that, or some of them will also use what's known as vector databases, which honestly are a very interesting technology for applying to LLMs in general, but it's not as well developed and capable as putting all of the information right directly into the context. Now, Notebook LM here is powered by Gemini 1.5. One of the key selling points of 1.5 when it was first announced was the fact that it has an up to 1 million token context window, which is pretty darn huge. That's like 8 or 9 times ChatGPT right now. Over 30,000 lines of code, 700,000 words. They've even successfully tested up to 10 million token context length in Google's testing. So I believe that Notebook LM here is indeed using that long context window to take in up to your 50 sources of PDFs or just text and reasoning across them, which is pretty incredible. And that's why some of these capabilities are a little bit nuanced and maybe a little bit more powerful than the classic chat with PDF apps you've seen. Again, directly in the interface here, we can note some interesting things. It can help you understand the things that you've posted. Obviously, studying is going to be a huge part of this. Talking across not only new information to you, but even your old information so you can compare it to what you're currently creating. There's a lot of really interesting use cases that I'm going to get into in today's video, but first I want to show you its star feature, my favorite thing about Notebook LM. This thing can straight up double as an AI podcast generator. It can take all of your sources that you've put inside here and then generate a very realistic sounding podcast about them. And this makes it a lot easier to not only digest the information, but also look at it from a different perspective, which I just find that so fascinating. And also, the podcast voices are not too bad. Some of the better text-to-speech that I've heard come out of the AI space. Now, it's not perfect. It still can hallucinate. And obviously, the voices aren't going to be absolutely perfect all the time. But what I've set up for you today, as you can see, we've got a bunch of different sources. It's created a podcast for me about migrating my Discord server. Extremely brief context. For this YouTube channel, I have a Discord server. I am making a new one. And honestly, this podcast that's AI generated should explain the rest for you. It's 10 minutes long, so we're going to listen to it, but I'm going to pause in between to make notes and offer my thoughts. Let's take a listen.
Ever get that feeling, where you find yourself glued to some online community or another, like you just have to see what's happening? Some Discord server or subreddit, whatever your online poison is.
Totally.
Well, picture that. But times 1,000, thousands of folks, all brought together by this shared fascination with, you guessed it, AI, artificial intelligence. And that's just the starting point for today's deep dive, because we're going behind the scenes of the MattVidPro AI Discord server and its recent should we say, relocation project.
Yeah, and this wasn't your average server upgrade either. We're talking a full-blown digital exodus. And the reasons behind it, well, they say a lot about how online communities work these days, especially with AI becoming such a big player.
And get this, we've got our hands on some juicy insider info, chat logs, server descriptions, both the before and after snapshots. We are about to become digital detectives.
Oh, love it. And to really crack this case, we got to start with the basics. You see,
Okay, so I'm going to pause it there just for a moment. As you can see, it does a really creative and great job introing you to the topic in a way that sucks you in, like a really good podcast. And the voices, they sound real. We have a male and a female host offering their own perspectives. It's just cheerful, it's charming, and so good it's scary. So good it's scary, I'm going to say it. But yeah, it's going to introduce to us and talk about my own Discord server migration. It's all based on the information that I gave it, and we'll go into how I developed this after we listen to it.
the original server, as popular as it wasn't even owned by MattVidPro.
Whoa, wait, seriously? I mean, the guy's practically synonymous with AI content. You'd think it was his digital domain from day one.
It's a bit of a trip down memory lane, actually. See, that server, it goes way back to Matt's early days, like Minecraft era early.
Oh, wow, the nostalgia.
Yeah, it was a fan-made thing, organically grown, and as Matt's star rose, so did the server's member count.
Makes sense, but talk about a happy accident, huh? Though I gotta imagine not owning the server, especially with that kind of growth, must have created some headaches down the line.
Oh, absolutely. It's like building a mansion on a foundation meant for a garden shed. And you can practically hear the frustration in Matt's own words from the chat logs. He talks about hitting walls with moderation, adding new features, even just organizing the dang thing. Imagine being a guest at your own party, except that party's gotten way out of hand.
Ouch. Yeah, not ideal. Especially with a community as, let's be honest, enthusiastic as this one. So what was the tipping point? What made him finally say, all right, new server time?
It wasn't so much one single thing, more like this growing realization, you know? Like he had this vision for what the community could be, sleek, organized, a real hub for AI jumpies, but the old server just couldn't keep up.
Right, like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It just wasn't working. So he's got this grand vision, but how'd the community take it? Were they all on board for the digital move, or is there some hesitation?
Honestly, a bit of a mixed bag, as you'd expect. Some folks, they were pumped about a fresh start, new features, the whole shebang.
Shiny new toy syndrome.
Totally. But then you had those who'd been there since the early days, you know, the OGs.
Sentimental value, I get it.
Exactly. And for them, it was this fear of the community splitting, losing that old school vibe.
Understandable. Did Matt address those fears directly, or?
Oh, totally. He made it clear this wasn't about ditching the old for the new, more like creating a better home for what they already had. Gradual transition, better experience, that was the message, and he made sure people heard it.
Okay, so we've covered the why of this whole server swap, but what about the what? We've got those descriptions. Paint us a picture. What were the biggest differences?
Wow. So all I have to say is that the information is accurate and it's really understanding in a, again, creepily human way what is going on here and what it's trying to do. It's making a podcast about it and it's like near perfect. But at the same time, it offers such like a unique perspective on the information that you're digesting. Normally, when you do your own work and you do your own note-taking, you're trapped in your own perspective, but now you're being offered an entirely new perspective on whatever information is being put into this thing. And I think that can lead to some very interesting outcomes. I think it can lead to entire spawn-offs of creativity. And again, we're going to get into that a little bit deeper later in today's video, but for now, let's continue on with the story of my server migration as told by this AI podcast.
Imagine walking from, I don't know, a kind of messy but charming flea market into this super modern, pristine art gallery. That's the vibe shift here. The old server, it was lively, no doubt, but man, navigating it was an adventure. You had channels for everything from AI news, which, fair enough,
Makes sense.
to lemon art and fan fiction.
Wait, hold up. Lemon art and fan fiction. Okay, first of all, amazing. You know a community's gone full-on awesome when their niche interests get that specific. And you're right, it speaks to this whole AI-fueled creativity boom, right? It's not just algorithms and code anymore. It's, well, lemon-infused art, apparently.
Exactly. And the new server. It's like Matt took that chaotic energy, bottled it up, and poured it into this sleek, well-organized space. Don't get me wrong, still lively, dedicated channels for news, resources, all that good stuff. But there's this emphasis now, a spotlight on AI-generated content, sections for sharing art, talking prompts, even messing around with AI bots.
So less flea market, more like an AI-powered art studio then. But did that vision actually translate to how people were acting in this new space? Give us the grand tour. What were those first few hours like on the new server?
Okay, picture this grand opening night at the coolest museum you've ever seen. You've got your early birds right, raring to go, snapping selfies with the AI art installations before anyone else.
Oh, I feel attacked. That is SO me.
And then you've got those who are a little unsure, like, is this new server going to be too cool for me? But they're peeking in, curious, and of course, no grand openings complete without...
Wait for it. Speedy and their legendary lemon emotes.
Oh, you know it. Speedy bursts in, like they own the place. Every channel is getting bombarded with lemon emojis. It's glorious.
Okay, so a little bit of context, like a contextual note. Speedy is a user on the Discord server, and again, I was just sort of pasting chat logs to give the AI context to create this podcast episode, and it noted that this specific user was spamming the emojis, and they're all, yes, you guessed it, lemon-themed based on the channel's whole character and etc., etc.
You gotta admire that commitment to a good meme. But okay, amidst all the digital confetti and lemon spam, any real moments of, connection happening? How are people actually feeling about this whole transition?
Okay, so remember GamerBath, our friend who was worried about the community splitting?
Yeah, totally.
Well, in the new server, they're like the welcoming committee, answering questions, calming nerves, even starting this whole debate about, get this, whether Matt's announcement about the new server was partially written by an AI.
Whoa, meta much. They're analyzing their own migration through the lens of AI. That's wild.
It shows you how ingrained AI is in their thinking. Even when they're talking about something as, let's be honest, normal as switching servers. AI isn't just this tool for them. It's like part of how they see the world, their online world anyway. And it wasn't just a one-off thing either. Throughout the logs, people are constantly bringing up AI, sharing artwork made with Midjourney, debating the latest language model, even asking for help making AI chatbots.
That's like such a unique and valuable perspective to add on top of the conversation. Again, that is powerful. That is real value that Google is bringing to the table here. I think that's fresh. I think that's interesting. And even though we're sitting here listening to what is essentially an AI-generated podcast, it still is providing something completely valuable, and you can have it just for yourself. This could be your own personal notes. This could be your own personal life. Imagine listening to two AI chatbots just talk about what's going on in your life and giving you that outsider perspective you might need to maybe make a shift to improve your life. That's the kind of potential we're talking about here. Let's continue.
Like AI is in the air they breathe, shaping everything, even if they don't always realize it.
Exactly. And that brings us to something really important. This whole Discord server saga, niche as it might seem, it's actually a microcosm of something much bigger. We're witnessing the rise of a whole new type of online community, one where AI isn't just the topic of conversation, it's woven into the fabric of the community itself. It changes how they talk, how they create, even how they see themselves as a group.
It's like we're getting a sneak peek at the future of online interaction. And honestly, it's kind of exciting, but also a little intimidating. Like, what does it mean for those of us who are still struggling to write a decent AI prompt?
The million-dollar question, right? Because the MattVidPro community, they might be ahead of the curve, but they're a glimpse of where we're all headed. And that leads us perfectly to the final act of this deep dive. What does this all mean? What are the wider implications of AI's growing influence on online communities? And what does it mean for how we connect, create, and even define ourselves in the digital age?
We've spent a lot of time in the weeds of this one AI community, haven't we? But it feels like this whole deep dive, it's been leading to something much bigger, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's like, imagine we're marine biologists, right? And we've been studying this one incredibly vibrant coral reef, all its complexities, the creatures that call it home.
Love the analogy.
But the insights we gain here, they can help us understand entire ocean ecosystems.
Okay, so how do we zoom out then? How do we take what we've learned from this one server, this MattVidPro microcosm, and apply it to the rest of the online world? Because let's be real, most of us aren't exactly hanging out in AI-specific communities, at least not yet.
And that's the thing, isn't it? That not yet. Because what we see happening with MattVidPro's community, that seamless integration of AI tools, the creative explosion, even the anxieties about change, Those are all early warning signs, little tremors before a much bigger shift. Remember how AI was practically a character in their discussions about the new server? It wasn't just a topic, it was an active participant.
It's like AI was the invisible guest at the table, subtly steering the conversation without anyone saying, "Hey, AI, what do you think?"
And that's what's so fascinating and maybe a little unnerving, right? As these AI tools get slicker, more integrated into our everyday platforms, we've got to ask, are we in the driver's seat? Or is AI starting to, influence the route?
Okay, now you're making me think of those sci-fi movies where the robot.
It's incredible how meta this is. They're having this discussion, oh, as these AI tools get more slick, no one's asking what its opinion essentially is, yet it's giving its own opinion right now. It is an AI, and it's not even realizing it in that way. Oh gosh, the meta stuff with the AI sometimes just goes in spirals.
Bots take over. But in all seriousness, how do we even begin to wrap our heads around that when most of us are still figuring out how to, like, write a decent AI prompt, let alone debate its existential implications?
It starts with simply paying attention. Next time you're scrolling through your socials, take a second, really look at how AI might be shaping what you see, the friend suggestions, those eerily specific ads, even the news that magically appears in your feed.
It's like realizing you've been living in a carefully curated algorithm this whole time.
Exactly. And once you start seeing those mechanisms, you can start asking the tough questions. Who benefits from this AI being used this way? Is it making the online experience better for everyone? Or is it just reinforcing existing biases, making the digital divide even wider?
So it's less about fearing AI and more about becoming, like, responsible digital citizens, critically examining its role in these online spaces we're building.
100%. It's about demanding transparency from the big platforms, supporting organizations that are fighting for ethical, inclusive AI, and maybe most importantly, not letting these conversations fizzle out. Because the future of AI, of online communities, it's not some predetermined thing. We're all actively shaping it, one interaction, one post, one like at a time.
Let's talk about food for thought. We started with a Discord server.
And then it kind of just goes into an overview and a wrap up. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible, I think, no doubt. A full podcast. And it could be about anything, any of these sources that you put in here. And that's just one feature, one facet of this Notebook LM. I think you'll notice that towards the end, it actually got into some very opinionated topics or opinionated conclusions about AI, but you kind of expect that from a podcast. And if it's going to provide you with a perspective, it's probably going to lean into whatever the AI's general perspectives are based on its training, which can be very interesting. It can lead to interesting results. It can lead to very specific opinions that I'm sure people are going to point out in the comments. Now, I want to talk about the information that I fed it to actually produce that 10-minute little podcast. And it's also cool that you guys all know about the MattVidPro server and the migration that's going to happen, so stay tuned on the channel for more about that because it's going to be awesome. So if you click on a source inside of Notebook LM, it will bring up the original source, which, as you can see in this case, we have a Perplexity AI generated overview of the Discord server. This is just some background info, background context. And it even generates a nice summary and gives you the key topics: AI community, AI resources, AI tools. And again, guys, this all just comes from Perplexity AI. I just literally asked it about the Discord server, and Perplexity AI gives me a bunch of information, and I just pasted it right into Notebook LM. I then got some initial reactions by the community just by copying and pasting chat logs in here, and that's initial reactions to the new server. We have the layouts as described by ChatGPT, for example. I just took screenshots, sent them to ChatGPT, and then copy and paste the layout directly into Notebook LM. And same thing with old server layout and old server conversations, just giving the AI the information it needed to essentially construct this somewhat interesting podcast. It's all one interface too, though. Like, even though you can click on these specific sources and get, some nice little summaries and key topics about each source, it's all integrated in this one interface where we can just chat with it as well. Tell me about the new OG badge. This is a feature in the new Discord server. The sources discuss a new Discord server created by MattVidPro. Yes, eventually there's just some context. Users who were a part of the original Discord server are granted an exclusive OG role in the new server. This suggests that the new OG badge is a badge for distinction of the users who were a part of the original community. The sources don't explicitly state which perks or privileges this badge gives you, but it likely signifies seniority and continued support for MattVidPro. Yes, pretty accurate. Very good. It gives you very accurate information, which is nice to see. I like that it pulls up the source too, where it found it, and actually can pull up the specific information. So in this case, we've got a chat log. And also, if we think this is important, we can save it to a note and then have it in the notebook with its respective citations, which I love. I love the idea of just pasting PDF after PDF in here and having all of these awesome sources that you can communicate and reason across. It's just so cool. Again, this is probably one of the coolest things I've seen Google put out in terms of AI products or AI experiments. I love these suggestions. What is the name of the owner of the server? What is the name of the channel dedicated to sharing creative works? If we click Notebook Guide, it brings up this stuff again. Let's do, an FAQ. Make me an FAQ for the server migration. So this is something I could actually post to the community, for example, saying, here's frequently asked questions. This is what's going on. This is actually literally useful for me. Why is there a new server? Yep, accurate information. Doesn't own the original server, can't contact the owner. What will happen to the old server? It will be archived, all content will remain. Will there be 2 separate communities? Nope, we intend to transition everyone. The benefits, again, it's actually missing a lot of information here that I didn't provide Notebook LM, but it could be more fleshed out if I gave it more information. You can just give this thing a ton of information and then have it sweep across different tasks, which is just so darn cool. How can I join the new server? It's in beta currently. Yes, you guys can't join the new one just yet, but very soon it's going to be public. New subscriber role. You have to verify your YouTube subscription to access all of the content and features. The only misstep here is the OG badge, which is not a part of the old server. That's only on the new server. So I would just remove this in general, but other than that, pretty great job. And check out all the sources too. Again, if we save it as a note and then look back here, we've got 10 total citations where we can look back and find all the specific information that it grabbed. And by the way, you can delete this audio overview and just have it regenerate a new one. Let's try the timeline. Like, that sounds super interesting. So we can see a timeline of how events took place as the server migration continued. This kind of gives me a nice macro view of what happened. Again, this would genuinely be useful, is genuinely useful for me. So think about applying it to your own work, your own projects, whether they be creative, whether they be for school. I mean, look at this. It categorizes it literally by the date because it has chat logs, which is pretty crazy. We have a cast of characters. We have Speedy, longtime member of the community, member who suggests renaming, member concerned about community splitting. Like, such a nice little breakdown of everything. This is, again, genuinely useful information for me. Oh, and by the way, you can actually click on these notes too and either critique them or suggest related ideas or help you understand them. It's useful on so many levels just from an interface standpoint, and we're finally getting to that point with LLMs where we can just shove tons and tons of information at it and have it reason reliably quickly across all of it. And combined with this interface, it seems pretty unstoppable. I will be using this over ChatGPT for certain scenarios where I need all that information readily available and I need to build upon it. Oh, and by the way, yes, you can make multiple notebooks here. There's some simple example ones if you wanted to. And I'm going to keep this one because, again, it's actually useful. Honestly, I think that this thing could be used as a really great brainstorming tool just because of the whole podcast. The podcast uses good, high-quality sounding AI-generated voices. They sound confident, they're knowledgeable about the information you provide, and they present it in a way that makes it seem validated. So if you put your weird, wacky ideas in here that you're very unsure about creatively or just nervous about, it can break them down in a way that might make you feel a lot more confident about them, might make them feel a lot more validated, thus giving you a new perspective to pursue them. And that is super valuable, at least from my perspective. I'm sure that you guys have your own perspectives and your own ideas on ways you could use this interface to circle around and do, brainstorming, whatever it might be. And I'd love to hear your ideas in the comments because I want to start using this thing more too. I really want to know as well, how good is this thing at actually reasoning through your knowledge? I have seen it make some mistakes before, guys. I have seen it infer things, like, for example, it said in the podcast that there is a whole fan fiction portion. That is not something that has been on the server. So we'll say, verify the claim that either server has a fan fiction channel. There is no mention of a fan fiction channel on either the old or the new server, which is good. That's correct. Well, one channel is called Lemon Art and Fan Fiction. That's not even true. I think this might actually be a hallucination from ChatGPT. No, there is no sexually suggestive themes in that Lemon channel. It's literally MattVidPro fan art. Use AI image generators to generate lemons, like the channel mascot, the lemon guy. And you can see the hallucination actually came from ChatGPT, because it was fed images. You can literally see in the image that I fed it, it says lemon art and fan. This actually says in the server lemon art and fan art, not fan fiction, but it made the assumption that it was fan fiction, which has led to, of course, the Google Notebook LM actually making a wrong distinction. So the information it was being fed was bad. It didn't actually hallucinate it, which is very interesting. When you start combining and building off of all these tools together, they can sometimes make small errors that translate into the final thing. What's nice is you can only chat with one source at a time if you really want to, which is probably useful if you're, creating different kinds of study guides or something. So finally, I want to end the video off by creating a new notebook here, and we're just going to try to have some fun with this thing. I'm going to take this random Quora thread about time traveling back to ancient Egypt for 5 days. I'm going to go to a new notebook LM. I'm going to make a new source. And again, here's where you can upload like links, text, or stuff from your Google Drive, including Google Docs, which can be automatically updated by AIs, just so you know, so you could have AI feeding this thing, or Google Slides. I'm just going to give it the link to this Quora and see if it can find some stuff and then make a podcast about this whole Quora online discussion. Okay, so honestly, for some reason, it seems to have trouble grabbing the information. This source is behind a paywall. So that's something you're going to want to look out for. Let's just copy paste it. So that's the whole log of this Quora post. And now let's generate a deep dive conversation just for fun. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering, it can take like 5 to 10 minutes to generate this AI overview, but honestly, just sit back, go do something else, get a cup of coffee, and then come back. It's really worth it to do these overviews. In fact, like I said, I think it might be the most powerful feature of this new Notebook LM experience. And here it is, folks. We got another 10-minute one. I don't know if we'll listen to the whole thing.
Ever wished you could just like hop into a time machine? Not just any time machine.
Right.
But one that takes you straight to ancient Egypt.
Okay.
For 5 whole days.
Wow.
What would you do?
Yeah, what would I do?
We asked that.
Yeah.
And you, our amazing listeners, delivered some really incredible answers.
It's so interesting how that...
What? It just assumed the context of a podcast entirely, saying, oh, we asked you guys that question, even though this all comes from Quora, by the way. Just assumed the role of a podcast. That's insane.
Question.
Yeah.
Really opens up like a Pandora's box of possibilities. I
think.
Like you really start thinking about like,
totally.
What do we want? What do we actually understand about history?
Yeah.
And what are our dreams for the future?
Yeah. And I gotta say, like, the range of responses we got was incredible. Like, we had everything from the super practical, like Carrie Karn, who is very concerned about,
What's Carrie concerned about?
Having access to clean water.
Yeah, right. Of course.
To, like, the wildly ambitious.
Right.
So it's like...
And that's the beauty of these deep dives.
Right.
So we get to look at what people want to do, but also, like, why those desires come up.
Totally.
So Carrie's concerned with water.
Yeah.
Maybe not as glamorous as, like, building a pyramid.
Right.
But it highlights something so crucial. It's like we take for granted all these things, like infrastructure and knowledge, the stuff that makes our modern lives possible.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like, imagine just being transporting back thousands of years.
Yeah.
Suddenly, even like the simplest things
Totally.
become like huge challenges.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes you
Yeah.
think about
There's-
all those everyday marvels, the things that we never even think about.
The voices are going wild in this one. Like I said, it can be a little hit or miss sometimes. It's like skip halfway through.
The chaos, the
Yeah.
ingenuity of those architects, the engineer, the workforce,
Yeah.
just the sheer manpower it would take to move those massive blocks.
It'd be amazing.
It would totally change how we understand what ancient civilizations were capable of.
That's actually
And
a good
speaking of
insight.
changing how we understand Tavai,
Yeah.
she had a different take.
What's that?
She was less interested in the grand structures
Okay.
and more about capturing everyday life.
And that's just as powerful in a way, right?
Totally.
The pyramids,
Yeah.
they tell a story of power, ambition, but the lives of the people who built them, who lived in their shadows.
Right.
Those stories, often lost to history, overshadowed by those giant monuments.
It's like that saying, history is written by the victors.
Exactly.
But what about the everyday, the triumphs, the
Yeah.
struggles of the
Yeah.
people who actually lived through it?
Of course.
Those are stories that deserve to be told.
Wow, crazy. It's just crazy how close to like a real podcast it kind of sounds. Just genuinely amazing. I mean, you could do studying theoretically if you put all this, like let's say you're in school, you just put all your notes, all your Google Slides from, the teacher, the professor, whatever, and then you could just turn it into a podcast, and while you're driving home from school, let's say, theoretically, you could just study. And then there's your studying for the day, and you'll remember it too. Like, that's good stuff. I end up remembering a lot of things from podcasts that I listen to, so, man. Powerful tools. Honestly, I think the most rounded off point that I've come to about all of this is that you don't necessarily even need new AI technology to create new AI technology that's extremely beneficial. Like, this is more or less a combination of clever UI design and a bunch of AI technologies or large language models hooked up together, and then finally we have the podcast generation tool. Putting all those ingredients in a certain way together can create something more powerful and maybe more useful in some circumstances than what we already had that was deemed powerful, like ChatGPT. And you're also seeing the fact that AI isn't just applicable in, the art domain or the writing domain or something like that. It's going to be applicable everywhere. And this is the worst this technology will ever be. This is the worst. It's only going to get better. It's only going to get upgrades. AI is going to change everything. It's applicable everywhere. And again, we still don't really have a good idea or comprehension on what it's actually going to do to the human race and society as a whole. But yeah, this is an awesome tool. I recommend you guys check it out. It's completely free. Thank you so much for watching. Share your ideas down in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.